I won't hide that I'm counting down the years until retirement. Those were the words of Slovenian superstar sensation and, in this channel's opinion, greatest of all time, Tadej Pogačar, this weekend whilst he hosted his very own Pogi Criterium in Slovenia with some pro cyclist friends. And it was amongst a number of interesting things that this year's Tour de France yellow jersey had to say. But don't worry, this doesn't mean that he's about to hang up the bike. And in fact, it might say more about just how dominant he's been since day one. So we're going to jump into this one, have a quick look and a breakdown of the things that he said, and a couple of clips from his Pogi Criterium itself. So let's jump into this one and have a look. So there's a lot to unpack in this one, so let's start from the beginning. I won't hide that I am already counting down the years until retirement. I started winning early and there may be worse results, but I am ready for anything. I will probably still ride a few more tours, although you can never say that you will definitely be there. The Tour is the biggest race and I doubt that the team will want to leave me at home for a few more years. Then he shifts a little bit to talk about his schedule for the rest of 2025 and he says, this year there will be a European Championships for climbers. So I'll be there. It's similar to one spring race that Juan Ayuso won earlier this year, but this European Championship probably means that I won't be able to compete in any other Italian classics except for Il Lombardia. He then talks about the upcoming Vuelta in just a few weeks and the chances that he gives his UAE teammates against the likes of Visma and Jonas Vingegaard, and he says that it's hard to say whether Joao Almeida or Juan Ayuso can beat Jonas at the Vuelta. If he hadn't crashed at the Tour, he certainly could, but now I don't know. Everyone can have a bad day. With only a couple of weeks left until the Vuelta, it's interesting to see his comments on Ayuso and Almeida having a chance to beat Jonas as well. Do you agree with that one? I think it's going to be very difficult if Jonas is on top form, but they've certainly got a chance if they're good and they work together. He also then talks about his performance at this year's Tour de France, giving some context that was interesting, saying, "You can't expect me to be glowing with happiness for all 21 stages. The Tour was really hard, one of the hardest I've ridden. Everyone who fought for the overall classification can confirm that. But now I've rested, reset, and I'm ready for new battles. We know that Montreal suits me better, but that doesn't mean I won't try to win in Quebec as well. It does not need to be necessarily me. We have a few other riders who could suit this goal, especially Jonathan Narvaez." Finally, he talks about this weekend's Pogi Criterium that he put together in Slovenia, saying, "I invited all the cyclists from my list to my Pogi Criterium. At first, everyone was excited, but then they started cancelling. Some are injured, others are sick. There are many other races, so it will be difficult to come. But I'm grateful to everyone who took part in the race. I'm happy to be home again, to see friends, neighbours, family. It's true that sometimes I wish I was a little less well known. Sometimes taking pictures and signing autographs is tiring, other times a little less, but I tried to please everyone." So there's a lot for us to unpack there, some really interesting things. But I think the headline from that interview is clearly the first thing he says when he talks about, "I'm counting down the years until retirement." On the surface, that sounds quite concerning, but actually I don't think it is if we look a bit further into it. When we consider why he might feel this way, we have to think about the fact that he's been racing from a very early age, especially at the highest level. He won the 2020 Tour de France at the age of 21 and has been either first or second at every single Tour de France since then. There's very few, if any, riders in history that have had a career arc like this. He also seems to race year round and seems to be at a consistent peak rather than sort of one or two peaks throughout the year. Obviously because he has a number of different goals that he's aiming for. And he's consistently at the top in pretty much everything that he does. He has very few real rivals in both one-day races and 3-week Grand Tours. So he's literally performing at the highest level and has been since he was very young. I'm a firm believer in the theory that the earlier an athlete has their career peak, the earlier it's likely to end also. I certainly don't see Pog going to the same sort of age as Roglic of 35 if he continues to race at the rate, intensity and aggression that he has been so far in his career. If you throw in with that the grind of things like media obligations during the Tour de France, sponsorship obligations for the team, always being spotted and mobbed in public by the fans, it's not hard to imagine that that all takes an extremely hard mental and physical toll. And I think the very fact we're talking about this sort of thing for a rider who's only 26 years of age just shows how dominant and impressive a career that he's had so far, that he's already achieved more than what most riders would in several careers put together. And we know that Pogačar is the sort of rider that needs to be mentally stimulated and excited to be able to train and perform at his best level, as evidenced by UAE saying recently that he believed Pogačar's peak was more likely to be a mental thing than a physical thing. And I think just the very fact that he's actually planning the fact that he's going to be here for the next few years and what he wants to achieve with things like the Olympics and other Grand Tours like the Vuelta and one-day races, which we saw he'd mentioned in an interview fairly recently, shows us that he's still excited and he's still trying to keep on top of these things and keep himself going for a few more years. He's not looking to throw in the towel yet, which is what a couple of people had been speculated and worried about recently, that he'd been burnt out after a very long season and a difficult Tour de France. But I think this just kind of proves the opposite, that he's not done yet, he's still got things to achieve, and that he's motivated to go on and do that. We also saw the UAE team boss in the same interview say that he thought Pogačar could potentially get even better from this point. So I think the rumours of Pogačar's demise have been greatly exaggerated. He's still going to treat us to a couple more years of his absolute peak, and I'm super excited to see how it plays out. And that also links into his Pogačar criterion. He's clearly having fun and he's clearly stopping himself getting bored if he's putting these things together. And I've got a favour to ask. If you're enjoying this one, make sure you like, comment, most importantly, subscribe. It's free and it really helps the channel. And for those of you that don't know, the Pogi Criterium was an event held in Slovenia this weekend. Attendance by invite only, as Pogačar invited a list of his friends and fellow Slovenian cyclists, including Pogačar himself, Matej Mohoric, Matteo Trentin and Luka Mezgec, organised in aid of Pogačar's hometown and youth cycling teams. And it was great to see as Pogačar posted some clips of himself and those guys training out on the road before the criterium. And it was great to see him interacting with the fans and the cheering crowds and keeping himself entertained whilst he's training for his next objectives. Rather than slowing down, he's still finding ways to enjoy the sport, even if it's on his own terms. And after the rumours this week that came out from an interview with Michael Storer, where he claimed that Pogačar was basically told not to win one of the stages to appease the French fans, nobody was going to stop him winning this one, as he took home the win ahead of podium finishers Luka Mezgec and Matteo Trentin. And in terms of the bigger picture, I think we could see some really exciting things also coming out from that interview, as he mentions that he's going to be going to the European Championships, Il Lombardia, and we know he's obviously going to be going to the Worlds and of course next year's Tour. So that's really exciting. It would be awesome to see him win the European Championships in the same year that he has the World Championships jersey also. And I don't think it's much surprise to see him going back to Il Lombardia to try and win yet again there in a race that has become synonymous with Pogačar himself. But it's nice to see him confirm those plans, along with obviously of course those races in Canada. And I think, like we said, we can be fairly certain that when he says counting down the years till retirement, it's more about acknowledging the fact that nothing lasts forever, rather than any immediate plan to hang up the bike. And I think we can all agree that his dominance means at this point that the challenge is finding new ways to stay motivated. But he's certainly doing that with these objectives that he's lined up and organising his own events. So if this is what Pogačar is like when he's thinking about retirement, then I can't wait to see what he does over the next few years. Let me know what you think. Is this what you expected from him? Do you think Tadej is going to keep winning for years? Or will we see him step away earlier than most expect? Like I say, I don't see him going as old as Roglic or Thomas, but I think we've got a couple more years left yet before we need to start getting worried. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, most importantly subscribe. It's free and it really helps the channel. And catch you on the next one.